Welcome to Pennsylvania. Yes, it's a misty, cool, very damp day here in northeastern Pennsylvania. I've been back from Kuala Lumpur in the United States for about 3 weeks now. The holiday season is finally over, and I'm already planning my next travel adventure. I was reviewing the last 6 months or 7 months of my travel, and I realized that of the 4 places I actually traveled to and stayed for a while, 3 of them I had been to before. And that surprised me. It's also a little disappointing. Usually when you travel, you try to see new places, but there's a certain amount of comfort that goes along with going to places you've been before. And I think that's why, after being sort of cooped up in one spot for 2 years, it's natural to take off and just go to places you're familiar with. I'm walking slow here, and I'm seriously reconsidering my choice of walking routes today, because this is covered with ice. You can see here the ice, although it's melted in most other parts, it has not melted here. If you've ever tried to walk on ice, then you know the worst kind of ice to try to walk on is melting ice. And this ice is all melting. It's 12 degrees right now. So if it stays 12 degrees, this ice will probably be gone by tonight. But the only reason it's here right now, ice all over town has already melted. This part of the trail that I'm walking on, though, doesn't really get any sunshine, so it can't melt unless the temperature goes up, but it's not getting any heat from the sun. This is just one of the many things that an urban hiker has to consider. I'm looking ahead, and the whole route doesn't look any better, and I'm wondering whether or not I should just turn around and head back. But I'm optimistic that maybe it gets better just a short distance ahead. We'll know in a minute. Okay, this looks like this path might be clear all the way up to Simpson. And if you've ever watched any of my videos along this trail before, this is the newest part of the trail. It goes up to Simpson, a little town just north of Carbondale. So I'm going to try this one and see how it turns out. As I was saying, I was looking at my travel itinerary for the last 7 months. I started out in Istanbul in Turkey, and I had been there once before in 2011, but it was only for 1 week. This time I was there for a month. Istanbul is probably turning into one of my favorite places to be. It's great just to wander around Istanbul. It has some of the iconic architecture, streets, and it has all kinds of public transport options. If you go back and look at some of my videos from Istanbul, you'll see what I mean. The train system, the ferry system. It's got trolleys in the tourist areas that you could take, but it's also a very walkable town. In fact, I did most of my travel, other than getting across the Bosphorus on the ferry, I did most of my moving around on foot. After that, I did go to one place that I hadn't been before, That was Budapest. And I like Budapest, but where I stayed was just too far out of town. I tried to find the cheapest place I could, and it only had one form of public transport, so it wasn't the most convenient place. I think I would have liked the city a lot more if I stayed closer to the center of town or someplace closer to tourist areas or something like that. After that, I moved on. I took a train to Vienna, which I had been to twice before. And I stayed in an apartment. It wasn't a hotel, it was an apartment that I rented through Airbnb. And it was very close to public transport. Vienna is another city that is also very walkable. So if you ever are interested in a place that is typically European, Vienna is a good place to go. It's certainly cheaper than London and Amsterdam, which are, if you're booking a flight, those are probably the two easiest cities to get to if you're flying from the US. But it's worth moving on to Vienna if you really want to see Europe, Central Europe, and what it really looks like. So anyway, I hung around in Vienna for a couple of weeks before flying off to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Now, I had been to Kuala Lumpur before. In fact, I used to live there for several years. So that was not any kind of adventure at all. I knew exactly where I was, where all the good eating places were, where I was going to try to rent an apartment. None of that stuff was new. It was all just going back. It was like coming back to Carbondale. It was very comfortable going back there. It's a place that I know very well. And at some point during my stay in Malaysia, I had to leave the country to renew my visitor's pass. And when I did that, I flew from Kuala Lumpur to Chiang Mai in Thailand, which I've also been to before several times. Then I flew from Chiang Mai back to Kuala Lumpur, stayed another month or so, and then flew back to the US for the holidays. So my trip, though long, was not really new. And I wasn't really paying attention to that until recently, when I was just going over my records and making plans for next year. So one of my resolutions for 2023 is to visit more places that I have never been to before. Now, I know I'm going to end up back in Malaysia at some point next year, or this year. This is 2023 now. I'm going to end up back in Malaysia this year. But before I get there, I want to have a small list of places that I visit where I have never been before. So that's my goal. I have some plans. None of them are firm yet. So when they do get a little bit firmer, I'll announce them here. So another reason to subscribe to the International Big Shot YouTube channel. This is really unusual weather for this time of year in Pennsylvania. Like I said, it's 12 degrees. That is really warm from what it normally is. Right before Christmas, it was low. It was low temperatures. We had weather in the minus 20s, something like that. It was cold. But then right during Christmas week, it warmed up. In Kuala Lumpur especially, right at the equator, the weather typically tries to kill you every day. With dew points, high humidity, high temperature. And when it rains in Kuala Lumpur, if you're outside, your best bet is to get inside, because if you don't, chances are good that you're going to drown. Here in Pennsylvania, like yesterday, I was out for a walk, And it was one of those typical all-day Pennsylvania rains. It wasn't heavy, but it was steady. And my 6 or 8 kilometer walk yesterday, by the time I got back to the house, I was soaking wet. But it didn't stop. All day long it rained. It hardly ever rains like that in Kuala Lumpur, but in Pennsylvania, that's not unusual. It's typical to have all-day rains. My second resolution for 2023 is to cut down on the weight that I travel with. I have 2 bags. One is checked, the other is a backpack that I take on the plane with me. Well, my goal for 2023 is to cut down the checked bag, which on this last trip was 22 kilos, and get it into a smaller bag, maybe 18, hopefully 17 kilos. Like I said before, there's a lot of stuff that I don't need to bring with me. So I'm going to try to do that. Morning. I've already purchased a smaller bag. It's a duffel bag. It doesn't have wheels. So the fact that I can't roll it around an airport probably will encourage me not to pack so much stuff into it. I think I talked about this before. I had a gratuitous pair of shoes that I never needed. I had several tripods that I never used. So I'm pretty sure I'll be able to cut down the weight substantially. Because at the end of my trip this past couple of months, I started to kick myself for bringing all this junk with me that I really didn't need. It's one of those things where when you're packing, you look at it and you think to yourself, well, maybe I'll use that for this. And you come up with some artificial reason to have that with you. But when it comes right down to it, you never use it. I never even unpack some of this stuff. So it's going out of the bag and it's not going back in. Well, I've reached the turnaround point here in Simpson. I'm crossing over the bridge across the Lackawanna. And I'm going to walk back, I hope, along the trail, if it's clear of ice. It's on the other side of the Lackawanna, not the side I was just on. And if it's not clear of ice, then I'm going to walk back along the road. It's not that big of a deal on this side. On the other side, it's a huge deal, as you saw. This part of the trail is gravel, and it does get a substantial amount of sun during the day. So I'm hoping that most of the ice, if not all of it, is melted. But it certainly is nice to be back on the trail again. As anyone who has watched my videos knows, I love walking on this, and I like riding my bike on it. In fact, my last video, the last cycling video, was made on the Lackawanna River Heritage Trail. You might want to take a look at it. I'll put a link to it up there at the top. Okay, let's get to the real reason I made this video, and that was to review the success or failure of the resolutions that I made for 2022. One resolution I made was to increase the production values for these videos. I think that's a win. I think I did that. I got the GoPro, which has much higher resolution than some of my other cameras. It has a much better stabilization system, and I like the colors better than I did from the Canon. I used the Canon G7X previously. Now, there's nothing at all wrong with the Canon G7X. It's a great camera, but I think the GoPro for vlogging like this is better. I use the Canon right now mostly for still photography. So that's a check mark. I did that. The other resolution that I made for 2022 was to double the number of subscribers for my newsletter. I have to say that's a fail. I didn't make it. The number of subscribers I have right now is about 160. And I think to double it, I would have needed 174, 175, something like that. I didn't quite make it. So the newsletter subscription, or the newsletter, is about sport development. It has nothing to do with travel, nothing to do with these videos. It's a completely separate thing that I do based on my background of coaching for 30 years. So if you're interested in sport development, you can always subscribe. There is a link to it either on the screen or in the notes below this video. So if you're interested, it's free. Just send your email in and you'll get it in your inbox every 2 weeks. So that was a fail. So I had 2 resolutions for last year. I achieved one and did not achieve the other one. I feel a little bit like Marcel Proust when I'm just letting anything that comes into my head make it into the video. Marcel Proust, you can look that up. But what I was going to say is that I'm aware now that when I make these videos out in public, almost everybody understands what I'm talking about because I'm speaking in English. And believe it or not, I'm in a largely English-speaking area. When I made these videos over in Kuala Lumpur or Budapest, Istanbul, or wherever else I was, there was a good chance that very few people would understand what I was saying. So my level of self-consciousness, let's put it that way, in making the videos plummeted. It was rock bottom. But I've noticed that until just now, when a guy ran past me and said hello, I didn't realize that that situation had changed. And now, thanks to that, my self-consciousness level is going up. But it's odd because I didn't feel self-conscious when I started this video today, and I had already walked by several groups of people along the trail. So I'm hoping that that will keep up. It is a good thing not to be self-conscious when you're making a video. There's no reason to be. The only thing is that if you're on the phone, you know, those people that walk around with their earphones in and they're on the phone, they don't seem to care whether or not you're listening to what they say or not. So I'm trying to develop the same, I guess, the same attitude about when I make a video. And who knows, maybe that might encourage some people to join in and be in the video with me. You never know. I'm going to save my Proustian commentary for more videos. I don't want to say everything that's on my mind in this one, otherwise I won't have anything to talk about in the next one. So I want to thank you for watching. If you're not subscribed, this is a good time to do it. And I'll see you in the next video.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe by clicking my face over there on the left. That's it for today. I'll show myself out.